how things come full circle, because you guys were one of the first like companies we ever worked with, and this is actually the first public podcast or appearance or anything I've ever made on behalf of the company.
Boom.
I shit you not.
That's great.
Like,
I like it.
He knows how ridiculous I am about it. If anyone else had asked, it would have been a no.
Put it this way. We talk to an app development team 3 times a week for the past 9 weeks. Scott has yet to turn on his Zoom call video. Scott has been a black square for 9 weeks with those guys. It's amazing.
That's good stuff. That's awesome. That's a
Power play.
That's a power move for sure. Yeah.
Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning in to episode 26,012 of the Misfit Project. I am your host, Drew Crandall.
Right on schedule.
Today, Hunter and I are joined by Scott Perkins, owner of ROMWOD, and a man that needs no introduction to the Misfit family, Mr. Cody Mooney. How we doing, gentlemen?
Good. You?
Good. It's like we haven't been like hanging out for the last hour or so.
Good. All right. Yeah, let's get it rolling.
So Scott, we're gonna start with you, and we're just gonna do the quick usual. Let's get to know Scott. So, where are you from? What do you do for work? And how did you get from what you do in work to ROMWOD?
Oh, gotcha. I grew up in Southern California, grew up in the desert between Vegas and LA. Straight out of high school, started a digital agency, built websites for a while, moved down to LA. Agency grew. Agency decided it didn't want to do hourly work anymore. We started acquiring some client projects, and ROMWOD was one of those projects. So the company, like, just a very interesting, startup essentially. And I took over as managing partner and have run for about the past 5 years.
Awesome. And Cody, we're going to provide a little context for the episode. You are definitely a unique individual when it comes to the idea of like so many people want to compete at the CrossFit Games and do this sort of thing. And you're, you know that you sort of maybe have that in your back pocket or something that you can go to, but you're very open and willing to sort of new experiences in life and then trying to find what your profession is and whatnot. So, people probably want to know like what you're up to these days. And I think it's a good segue to what we want to talk about with the episode. So
yeah, I mean, pretty much what you said there. So this past year when we didn't have really a games because of like kind of what's going on for teams and stuff like that, I just wasn't going to say no to life. I knew that like, to compete, there's a lot of opportunities that come your way, but then you always have to think about what's going to allow me to compete, because competing at the CrossFit Games is no freaking joke. And that's going to be, if you want to be that person, especially me, like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So, this was kind of the first year. I was just like, I had a really cool opportunity. Scott kind of came to me and he's just like, hey man, I'm in a position where, I've gotten some health markers back and I'm maybe not in the best spot. I would really like I think we could work well together. And, he's like, and it was kind of like a mutual thing because I think there was a lot of stuff there that I needed help with as well. And, like I think as a lot of athletes do here and there. So that's kind of how I merged into that. So I was like, all right, I think this is one of those opportunities where I'm like, I'm willing to say yes to, and I think it fits with what I want to do in life. So that's kind of where I've been at for the past 8 to 9 months now. And I'm loving it. I love what I do. And, health and wellness is always like a big thing. So if I can keep that, that's like kind of my pillar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To give the listeners a little bit of context for this episode, I've really wanted to do this episode for a while, but didn't know exactly how we could turn it into more of a conversation than like, I think when we do the episodes where we have a direction, but we're just kind of shooting the shit a little bit more. I think they're a little better than like bulleted points of this is exactly what we want to go through. So I've wanted to do an episode for a while where we're talking about the things that we always talk about on the Misfit Project, but now we're talking about performance for business or your job, or just maybe, we always talk about the other 23 hours, quote unquote, outside of the gym. Now we're talking about the other 23 hours, but like part of the 23 hours is the gym because you're using that specifically to have, better performance throughout your day. And this, will translate to athletes because we're going to talk about things like mood and, certain things that you can do for your health that get you in the right place mentally. But for me personally, it was such a challenging transition. And one of the reasons why I'm proud of what, you've done over the last few years is this transition from like jock to like fake jock to like entrepreneur. Like I still think I'm a jock. I'm not actually one. And how do you balance all of these things? And for me now, when I train, when I think about what I'm going to eat, when I think about all of the tenets of the Misfit Project, it's under a new lens. And that lens is, I want to be really productive at work. I want to be able to balance that, with my personal relationships and all this stuff. Like it's cheesy, but you're training for life. And for me, there is a little bit more of a twist on it for like training for business performance. Like I want to be able to, like when I'm working, I want to be able to hit the ground running and really tackle projects like, with focus and good ideas and all that kind of stuff. So talking to you too over the last few months, it just felt like it was a really good way to frame this conversation. And I still have my little check boxes that I want to hit, but I think they're going to kind of come up naturally. So, Scott, if you want to maybe take us back to, prior to when you reached out to Cody about this stuff and just talk a little bit about where you were at, maybe physically.
Sure. I mean, yeah, for years it was I come from, a family background that wasn't really health conscious at all. And, it's just uneducated, small town, on the health front. And then, when I started working, in CrossFit, you see it, and I was somewhat adopted by it, but you still don't like fully understand. Like I was so focused on the business that I wasn't really, connecting with the health side of it. But end of 2019, so say like September or so, I had just noticed like extreme fatigue physically. I was overweight. At my heaviest, I was about 200 pounds, which is about 40 pounds heavier than I am today. I'll be pretty open about it. Like, it drove clinical depression. I've struggled with it for years. It drove, just fatigue, tiredness, mood, just relationships. It affects so many things when you're not healthy. And it in my position, that's something that can't be ignored. As, not only as owner of ROMWOD, but sitting a VC firm, sitting at the head of a VC firm with multiple investments, like, the downline to me is, I won't say massive, but it's substantial. Like people's jobs and everything are on the line. So if I'm not able to operate at a pretty high level, there's costs,
right?
And those costs weigh heavy. So essentially end of last year, I wanted to find the physical reasons for why I was just, really not doing well. Went in for some testing and essentially found that, in addition to being overweight, in addition to everything else, my resting heart rate was 114, which a lot of people are like, whoa, how's that even possible? Right. They did multiple tests. I had 3 separate tests. On
it was
3
like, they didn't
days.
like believe it.
Yeah. It was a thing that, they had to test multiple times. And then, sugar was in the pre-diabetic levels. All of my adrenal hormones were way off. Long story short, my body had been it had been operating in fight or flight mode for years, almost. And you know better than anyone the effects of stress on the body, like, and how that affects physically. So if you can imagine that happening just for years on end, it, can really put a person in a negative place.
Yeah, you're talking about a system within the body that's supposed to save your life,
yep,
and it turns everything else off. So your body was trying to save its life all the time and not able to operate really in any sort of normal functioning at all.
Yep. And I think it was compounded by the fact that I was almost forcing it into that. I was trying to biohack my performance, whether it was caffeine or nootropics or whatever it is. All those things can be done in a healthy way, but because it wasn't balanced with, any sort of exercise or moderation, I ended in a position where, I couldn't push myself hard enough, fast enough anymore because the level kept being reset.
Right.
And that just gets you into your body will literally shut down on you. I hit that wall.
Can you elaborate a little bit on maybe what your, not like day-to-day schedule was like, but it was like, I'm envisioning somebody who's working, 16 hours a day sort of situation, like fueling themselves on the, focus aid and caffeine and stuff like that, based on what you're saying with like, were you doing any sort of exercise, or was it just kind of like, I'm doing whatever I can to kind of continue working.
No, I mean, I felt I didn't have the time for exercise. I mean, I was literally up at 6 a.m. I was walking the dogs. I'd be lucky to grab breakfast before I headed to the office. I was in the office by 7:30. And 16 hours is conservative. I mean, there were days that it was 18 and, 6 hours of sleep was a luxury. And that went on for years. And I mean, I don't look back at it and regret it, because it was during those years that I was able to accomplish some pretty aggressive things, but the cost is, I mean, it
Can't be ignored.
no, not at all. It could have been done in a much healthier way, basically. And, the schedule was intense. And, to maintain that schedule, we're not talking 4 days a week, 5 days a week. We're talking 7 days a week, usually 6 if I was lucky. It was just continuous. It was nonstop, and that went on for almost a decade.
So the model that we talk about a lot in here is fairly close to, what I typically refer to as ancestral health. The direct connection to, like, if it was like a doctor, would be functional medicine. And the thing that popped into my head is the functional medicine, sort of statement that gets used a lot is conventional medicine. You're walking around with a pebble in your shoe and it's digging into your heel, and conventional medicine gives you a painkiller so that it doesn't hurt anymore. And conventional medicine just takes the pebble out of your shoe and kind of throws it away. So the ideas of caffeine and nootropics and all these different things, to me, is sort of like that painkiller. Whereas if we can get rid of the pebble, throw it away, set a new baseline, and then use tools for what they're supposed to be used for instead of Band-Aids, that's when you can really kind of move the needle.
Absolutely.
So speaking of move the needle, what do you think, like stuff that you're doing now? I mean, obviously, like one of you posted the video, I don't remember who, but you were running, you didn't have a shirt on, you were running on the runner. And like you really love to see that kind of thing. Like you really love to see, like, you could see how healthy you were. Mm-hmm. Like you could see, like, the way that your body was moving completely different, than, it used to, the way that you look, just sort of, like a presence of like after a certain period of time, you start to believe in yourself a little bit more. So you carry yourself, a bit more like an athlete. And like, tell us a little bit, how did you get from, we're talking about, we're not even a year removed from when you guys started working together. It hasn't been a year yet.
No.
Like, what really moved the needle for you? What do you think has made, like, the biggest impact on how you got from there to here?
Oh, I mean, it's a culmination of a lot of factors. I mean, end of last year, hitting that wall and needing to really make a change. I knew I hadn't done it independently, for a decade. So it was like, look, I'm going to need some help with this. I need someone that, kind of has a much better health and, kind of a health work balance. I know Cody for a while and, just felt, this is someone I was going to have to trust and work with at a very high level. And I had seen athletes for years, it's phenomenal what they do, but I think there's a transition that happens. I'm sure we'll get into that and kind of how Cody came around. But what it was for me was, it was simply an accountability partner. It was someone that called me out. Very few people, it's a weird thing to say and it almost sounds arrogant, but very few people will call me to the mat on things. A lot of time,
confirm Cody doesn't shy away from that stuff. But he also to give him credit, he's laughing, but he doesn't sound like a dickhead when he does it. You can just tell that he cares.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think that's, part of the reason why it's not like when people think that, we work, like, you think of me as his trainer, whatever you want to think it as, but like people need to understand too. So we work out twice a day, but I am with him working out with him. It's not like me over his shoulder yelling in his face. It's a mutual thing there. And that's where I think it's a little bit different. I think that if I ever had a personal trainer in some sort of way, I'd want someone.
It's awkward.
It is.
From both sides, to be honest.
I agree. And that's why, honestly, I never used to take on one-on-ones because I just wasn't really about that. But that power of like the community and us doing it together was a big thing. So, I keep talking about where you were talking about, like, just for people understanding, it's not that I think really helped morph in that, like, I'm able to say things because we're both there together growing. It's not just like, I'm here because I was an athlete and you're here and I'm allowed to. It's like, no, let's move together. Let's do this together.
It's like the training partner or someone who's just like, hey, you want to come hit a workout with me? And it's like, I know that I have someone like Cody who's going to hold me to that. Like, he's not going to miss a workout because it's part of his routine. Like, I need to like attach myself to that to build that habit.
Exactly.
Well, we're already checking off the boxes here. Our number one thing with the Misfit Project that we start with is that we evolved in groups and that we relied on each other for these certain things. So he is relying on you to help with sort of that professional journey, and you're relying on him. And as human beings, we don't need to be all of those things, right? Like, we, again, evolved and have these biological reward systems and, you know, chemicals that are produced in our brain. And it's all based on, we survived better when we were in groups and we helped each other out. People had their place of what they did. And to put that into context based on something that you two have experienced is why I wanted to do this episode, because this stuff is so powerful, but it can be challenging to be like, be in groups. Like, good luck. So providing that sort of context to me is just
tough, because you hear about individuals who are super what you would probably consider disciplined and focused very much on what they're trying to achieve, and that's incredible. But a lot of times they'll do it kind of on their own. They won't have that support system,
or maybe
it's just like,
or maybe it looks that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I agree.
Like
I don't
that's
think
like
it's
the
that
Instagram
way.
thing. Because
Like, you name me one person, I'm gonna be able to almost tell you someone that they train with, someone that holds them accountable, someone that pushes them. Like, I mean, I do.
There's like
agree.
the Michael Jordan sort of thing where he made it seem like he was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you make it seem like that, but there's also, if you want to be a professional, there's times where you need to be able to do that. Like, there was times where I had like multiple training pieces in a day, and there was times where people didn't want to do one with me, and I'm like, okay, I got to go do that on my own. I need to be disciplined because this is what I want. But there was also multiple times a day where people jumped in with me, and that helped me so much. Like, I wasn't training alone in my basement, like all the time. It's it tells a cool story, but I mean, we're all human, you know, athlete or not, like that stuff is hard, you know.
Those things evolve over time as well. I mean, we started just remote, you know. I talked to him in September, and it just became a text message in the morning. Hey, did you eat breakfast? Hey, did you work out? You know, send me a photo of your runner screen or rower screen, you know, constantly checking in remotely, and just kind of having that mental check of like, no, I need to do this today because someone's going to ask about it.
Right.
And starting to make those changes slowly. And then it grew from there. And COVID was actually a huge catalyst in just making some large change. The course of this year, things have changed a lot for everybody.
Yes.
But one thing COVID was able to do, and I mean, we can get into more detail, is I had the opportunity to come here to Maine. When COVID occurred, I live in LA. LA is a very challenged area right now. And Cody happened to be in town, as COVID was going down. I mean, literally is like, stores were getting, emptied out and everything in LA. And, he basically said, hey, let's go to Maine for a couple weeks. Like, it's completely different there. And what that allowed for was an environment where everything was controlled. We rented a lake house, and there was no Uber Eats. There was no, access to ship food.
He's laughing over there because Cody really like you'd think maybe that Maine is like quite a bit different than other places, but like where Ted, Hunter, and I grew up, suburbia is suburbia sort of a thing. So like talking to Cody, it's always been like crazy. Like, he's always eaten real food. He's always been active. He never watched a ton of television. Like, you would have had to drive a decent amount. Like, who's going to drive for 30 minutes to go to like Pizza Hut?
It's almost more like Midwest. Like, if you're trying to imagine it, you're like
exactly
kind of out there.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up we don't have a grocery store in my town.
Yeah. So it's
drive to the next one over.
just very much like you learned this stuff just through your life. It was just the example that was set for you. And that's why it could be maybe construed that it's easy for you, but you like didn't get pulled into all of the like literal addictions that we all did, you know, growing up, you know, junk food. And like, for me, exercise was like, okay, well, I play football, so I got to run from this spot to that spot that's 10 feet away, like that kind of thing. So it's cool that you got brought back to that because it was in the same area, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were
lake house.
like, that's part of the reason why we went there, because I knew what I had at home. Like I knew I had that gym I trained and stuff. So I knew like that was a big piece, and I knew that had to be a big piece. And when gym's closing down and stuff, I was like, okay, this is where we need to be. So we were, I don't know, a mile away from where I grew up.
Yeah.
So we were in the same town, same area. So we really did get to actually experience what it was kind of used to be like for me. Yeah.
And I mean, just for context, I lived in downtown Long Beach, which is, you know, about 12 miles south of LA. And my office and my apartment were a block away from each other. So I'd literally walk between the two, and it was in the restaurant district. So my diet was literally just anything takeout. When Cody and Alec had come in for that film shoot and come by the apartment, open my fridge, it was
It's
like
like seeing the light.
Yeah, there's
like one water bottle in the fucking back there.
It's like all the college memes. There's like mustard in a water bottle.
Yeah. I'm like, is this brand new? He's like, no. I'm like, what the frig?
It was
There's
no
nothing in
joke.
here.
I didn't cook. I didn't have anything. I had no understanding of like what healthy food was. So it was every night. It was just Uber Eats.
And we talk about this fairly often, this idea of the gas tank, and whether it's mentally or physically, you are going to be, if you're doing something and you're, you know, really trying and focused on it, you're going to pull your resources away. Your gas tank will empty. And the research shows that when you pull that gas tank empty, your body food wise is going to go for convenience, calories, and you literally do not have the gas left to make a solid decision. It's not there. And for you add in convenience factor and how many hours you're working. Like that's just how it goes.
I mean, I literally, it's wild to think about now, because as you're doing it, you don't really realize how negative it is until you look back on a.
Well, you're also surrounded by it, like that area, and especially in the like kind of more tech industry, like that's just the culture and that's just the standard, and it's not abnormal until you until you go to Maine,
totally.
where you're a mile, yeah, like real Maine, where you're a town away from the nearest place to get food. It's like, oh wow.
I mean, I would come in, I wake up and I had 3 or 4 coffees throughout the day, didn't eat a bit of food the entire day. I'd get home, maybe
fasting, nailed it.
Yep. Right. 8, 9 o'clock at night, I would order egregious amounts of takeout because my body was just like
really
so
prime
done.
up the body to get some quality sleep.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of food, looking back on it now and the portions and stuff, it was sickening the amount of food that I would eat. It would put me into
Can you name your top 3 spots?
Wingstop, Panda Express, and,
oh my god,
yeah, Panda was a big one. Or there was a Chili's right at the base of the apartment as well.
Solid, nice.
Cody's literally never stepped foot in.
Actually, it's so funny you said, because the other day we were talking about, he's like, oh, I used to, something reminded him of Chili's, and I was like, thinking in my head, I'm like, shit, dude, I've never been into a Chili's. Like, I don't even know. Like, yeah, I have no idea.
I think the Crandall family had a table at Chili's that just said Crandall.
It's funny you mentioned that, because the place that I lived in Southern California, there was a plaza like a mile away from my apartment complex, and there was a Wingstop, a Chipotle, a Panda Express, and a donut shop. And like, I literally went to the donut shop and Chipotle before I went to my apartment. And I was like, this is gonna be good.
But I mean, that was every night, and I know what it was now, but I would always wonder, after eating this crazy amount of food, why I would literally wake up at 2 a.m. just still sitting on the couch with the plates next to me, and my body went to complete like food overload.
Yep.
It just shut down. Like, it was almost involuntary.
So what were the first dominoes to fall? So you're in Maine, you guys have worked together both in person and remote a little bit, but now you're I don't want to say excuse, but now you might think of it as an excuse. I can't sleep enough, or I can't exercise, or I can't eat well. Like, was there an order to that? Did it all fall at once? Like, I'm just interested in, like, COVID sort of proved to you that it is worth it to work those things into your day.
Absolutely.
And, you know, like, how did that end up happening?
I mean, basically the lake house gave an opportunity to just adopt a completely different lifestyle. You know, you're not, there's definitely challenges with adapting to that, but I think, you know, and I'll preface this by saying I completely realize, you know, the negatives that COVID has caused across the world.
Yeah.
You know, I've had friends lose businesses, and like the gravity is not lost on me. And I think that context should just be there. But, you know, the opportunity that presented with COVID in my life was to get out of an environment that was encouraging negative habits, and be in an environment where not only did I have, you know, positive encouragement, but literally no option to do negative things. Like I couldn't order Uber Eats or get a hold of some of the things I would traditionally do. So, I mean, the order of effect, it was, you know, it kind of happens naturally. I literally just mirrored Cody's lifestyle, everything from nutrition to workout. You know, we set a work schedule, and, you know, it just became very, very regimented and
How's your sleep
effective.
now? Is that one of the things that you've made a big change in?
Yeah, it was a huge thing. I mean, now it's minimum 8 hours. And, you know, that just comes from being I'm able to be so much more productive during the day that I feel like I'm fine with taking the 8 hours to sleep, where I wasn't before. Previously I had, you know, I can't sleep that much because I need more hours during the day to accomplish. But now that some of these changes have been made, I can get, you know, 3 times the work done in far less hours.
I think that's something to take away too, because I think some people think that like if you're listening to this, like, don't think that now he just lives this like, oh, you know, I put my work to my side and I work out. It's like, no, like this man, the stuff that he gets done in a day would make most people just like, makes my head spin. You know what I mean? But like now he's just realized that
He upgraded to a Ferrari.
exactly, you know, he started putting gas into his car instead of water, and he realized how much further he could go on such little time now. So that's a big thing. Like the amount of work has not changed. I think it's actually increased, but you know, like his intensity and his, like, it's really cool to see, because it's brought a huge aspect to the business side for him that I think that now he's understanding, like, wow, this really has really showed me like what I can do mentally and physically when I really set myself up for a, you know, like success.
Yeah. The culture in our country, you know, especially right now, and I think it's changing a little bit in the tech industry, which is nice because a lot of the country sort of follows that lead when it comes to performance, is like, the law of diminishing returns is extremely important here. Like, do not be impressed by ass in the seat from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Like, what is coming out that side? Like, if you're trying to be a high performer and you think that as long as I'm here enough and doing something, like, things are good. It's like, no, if you're a high performer, you should be able to do an obnoxious amount of work in like 6 hours.
Yep.
And you can set your life up to do the sort of things that you're talking about, like, without having to put in that level of hours where, like, you might be working twice as much and you might be getting a similar amount done, but does it have the same quality to it? Like, is it really as good as you want it to be?
And what does that do to your body?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like there's sitting that 6+ more hours just in a chair just because you're like, oh, these are the times I have to be there. What negative effects is that having on you? Then it cuts into your sleep.
It's astronomical.
It's a psychological thing too, where it's like if you're somebody who does, you know, kind of prefer the volume of time spent working, it's so much easier to say to yourself, like I'll get to it later or something like that, because it's like, oh, I know I'm going to be sitting behind my computer at 8 or 9 at night. So yeah, I'll take care of it then. And, you know, it's much easier to just kind of push those things off, where I feel like if you have kind of maybe a little bit more regimented schedule, it's, yeah, these are my work hours. This is what, like, I know that I have kind of that evening time to myself coming, like, let's focus on this stuff now. I'll get to, myself, not saying get to myself later, but like you just have those separated times where work doesn't bleed in. And like, we kind of experienced that, like almost the opposite of what you did during COVID, where it was like, oh yeah, I'm going to wake up and the commute to my office is now 18 steps to my chair. And it's like, I'm just going to sit behind my dining room table with my 2 monitors until like noon. And then I realized I've taken like 200 steps all day. And it's like, so it was kind of the reverse. But when you come from that and make the switch, like you realize how much more kind of efficient you can be without those kind of deleterious effects.
Yeah. So the reason I asked about the sleep is the trajectory here of the Misfit project, sort of brought more people into your, what we call the tribes. And then we have to really set ourselves up for the other stuff to take hold. You just need enough sleep. Like that's just a fact. And there's, the fun thing that we always throw out there, 5.5 hours of sleep or less versus 8.5 hours of sleep or more, your body burns 40% more fat. So that's, I like to throw things out there for people that are trying to figure out like what's the exactly
that
what's going to stick.
A lot of people.
Like when you change your sleep to the point where you feel good when you wake up in the morning, your life completely changes. If you wake up in the morning and you feel like shit every single day is a serious problem, and it's not the way that your body is supposed to work.
Yeah, but then there's that question, like, if that happens for so long, you almost ask someone like, how do you feel? And they're like, oh, I feel all right. I feel good. But it's like
your normal.
Hard. Yeah,
do you know what
normal
good feels like?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what your body's actually capable of? But I really don't think some people do, because they're like, this is just how I've been now for years,
I think that was a huge realization, is just the, when you have such a low baseline of what good should be, or how you should feel, like, understanding that there is, healthy baselines and realizing where those are, you're like, oh wow, I was blind for so long.
What's the morning routine? I nerd out on this shit like at a extremely high level, and it started with there's a book called, I think it's called like Daily Rituals or something, where they went to they went back in history and looked at it. It was more on the creative side. It was more writers and poets and whatnot. But it bled over really well into Silicon Valley, because the people who were trying to like hack the best way to do their morning were looking back towards creatives, the kind of person who would like, not work, like mentally prep for 6 hours before writing for 2 hours or something like that. And I know that you guys sort of have a bit of a routine that you're doing now. So I'd love to hear what your mornings kind of look like.
Yeah. So it's a 6:30 wake up. And then the first thing
brutal, by the way, because 6:30 is a reasonable time, but when you're talking months and months and months, it doesn't break. Like it does not change. It's something that's,
and do you guys wake up without the alarm? Yeah. Is it an alarm thing?
I tend to, yeah.
Yeah. Like if I don't wake up, I will wake up usually right around that time, plus or minus a couple minutes. Like some days I wake up and it's like 6:15. I'm like, okay. Or some days like I'll hit snooze and I wake up before the second alarm happens. So it's just something like that. The first thing is water, lemon, and salt.
Here we go.
That's like instant, and just pound that down. And then we're in the gym by 6:50. We're warming up. The workout's written on the board.
No caffeine yet?
No caffeine, nothing.
Yes, I'm loving this.
We work out at 7 every morning. That usually takes us to about 7:50, 8 o'clock. We'll take 10 minutes to do mobility. That's one big thing that both of us have been working with. So we'll, kind of outside as we can right now until, winter comes, like mobility time. And then he kind of does his own thing after that. So around like 8:15, I'll cook breakfast. That's usually done by like 8:45, and then I take my own time. So he'll like eat breakfast, whatever not, and then I usually start work at 9:30. So I have about 45 minutes to an hour where he's kind of prepping for the day, doing his own thing, and I am usually I read every morning, and I just kind of take my time. Either I'll eat my breakfast outside, just nice and peaceful. Like that's my time where it gets me like it. That's my line where it's like, okay, we worked out, we did this, we did that. Like I'm gonna get my mind right. And then I start work at 9:30. So,
and he said that like while he's cooking breakfast, you guys kind of like alternate, like when you have your time, what does your time entail? in that window?
So mine in the morning is basically planning, everybody else's day, essentially.
Okay.
It's the delegation section.
Yep.
I basically just need to slack in, hey, these are the goals for the day. This is what needs to be done. I need to make sure, he has a list of things to tackle. I'm sure we'll get into kind of how Cody's role is evolving, but because he's managing very key parts of the business, it's important to update on context and make sure that all that information is flowing back and forth. But I normally just start with that, because without a plan for the day, like, you can't be successful.
Right.
Too many people just jump into task after task after task, and you snowball, and then you end up at the end of the day with, yeah, I got a shit ton of work done, but I didn't get anything that needed to be done.
Right. Yeah.
So I make sure that time prevents that issue.
And to answer your question, caffeine is not until 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Yeah. For anyone that doesn't typically listen to the Misfit Project, the quick science here is basically that your body's cortisol levels and melatonin levels are supposed to be in an inverse relationship. So when you get up in the morning, cortisol spikes so that you can be awake and active and happy. What they're doing is they're waking up, they're making sure that they're obviously hydrating, but that cocktail also helps with adrenals. So it helps bring the cortisol level up, which is good. And then you guys exercise, which shoots cortisol levels up even more. And it's funny because cortisol gets the bad name of being the stress hormone, but it has very specific use. Like, if it stresses you out when you wake up in the morning, the idea is that you're just alert. And basically, if you didn't have that, your blood pressure would go all out of whack and you'd pass out when you stood up. So that's supposed to start high, but then it's supposed to go down throughout the day. And when it goes down, your melatonin levels are able to go up. So we can understand why sleep would be an issue if someone was chronically stressed. That's why that would happen. So when you guys do that, you're really setting yourselves up again to naturally produce melatonin and to be tired at the end of the day. And obviously waking up at 6:30 sets your circadian rhythm, exercise already out of the way, or, I know you guys train again, but already out of the way. If someone else only did that single session, that's the type of stuff you say to someone who says they can't sleep. It's like, why are you waking up at 6:30 and training?
Well, and also, correct me if I'm wrong, but the body will adapt if the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is go for the cup of coffee with caffeine, and that cortisol doesn't elevate. And the times that you miss that caffeine is when you're running into that wall.
Yeah. So that's typically, you're going to look at people talking about things like adrenal fatigue and their adrenals all being out of whack. Your body is not going to, you don't get to make this super cocktail of caffeine and cortisol. They don't work together. You're telling your body, I don't need the cortisol anymore. So then your body's not going to produce it. And again, that creates the issues with your body is going to respond to cortisol coming down with the melatonin starting to be produced and coming up. So you can shut that stuff off. It's no different than taking high dose melatonin and your body's like, well, I don't need to produce this anymore. We're fine. You stop taking it. And then, you're having serious issues there. So by waiting, you actually get we're literally all drinking coffee right now. But it's a tool and it's got a time and a place. And we, again, don't want it to be the Band-Aid instead of pulling the rock out of the shoe sort of the situation. So you should feel awake and alert prior to drinking coffee. Fairly simple
100%.
Kind of situation. And then that way it actually does something for you. Because we've all been there when you rely on it, maybe at a late night or, you went out partying or who knows what you were doing, but you rely on it and you're chasing it the whole time. Another cup will give you that spurt for a second and then
it's never enough.
Another
cup.
Problem. Exactly. Because it's not really doing a whole lot for you.
Yeah, it's so true. My first cup of coffee today was at 11 or whatever. And I was wired after that one, but if I wake up and drink a first cup of coffee, I'm
doesn't do a whole
not
lot
even
to you.
Done it. And I'm already thinking about the second cup because I'm not there yet. I need another cup.
And I could say from experience, you do that for years on end and you use it to fuel your day, especially with not eating, not exercising, not doing anything. It's a big part of where they attributed this fight or flight mentality. Your body is just constantly operating.
Yeah. So if you're constantly up there, and we also know I just did a quick search because I can't remember always off the top of my head, but caffeine is around a 5-hour half-life. Mm-hmm. You drink your last cup of coffee at oh yeah, I'm good at 1 or 2 in the afternoon. It's you've still got half of that caffeine in your system when you were hopefully starting to get kind of down regulating, getting ready to go to bed. Mm. And if Focus Aid, caffeine, whatever it is, if that's going down at like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, like,
oh, my last coffee, like Starbucks at the base of my building closed at 5. I was literally, they had a coffee every single day ready at 5 p.m. right before they closed because they knew I'd be walking in to grab it.
perfect.
And it was
And that's
Customer service.
You say coffee. What was
all of that stuff is actually highly personal as well. So if you do one of the services like 23andMe, they'll tell you whether you metabolize it fast or slow.
Right.
So the people that are slow metabolizers, it's a double negative because you drink more because you don't really feel it, but the half-life is even longer. So it stays really long. So the people that drink a ton of caffeine and then are awake super late at night, like, that's the problem. They're not really feeling it. The people that metabolize it fast are the people that drink a cup of coffee and go, holy shit.
Yeah.
And what's good about that is they're the kind of person who could drink an espresso at like, at dinner, like, at an Italian restaurant, and then just like pass out instead of being wired all night. So all that stuff, sort of remains absolutely highly personal. We're sort of starting to blend categories a little bit. And the things that you're talking about have a profound effect on your ability to be mindful. But are there any things that you guys do specifically to a mindfulness practice, or is it sort of all just like part of the package? Like I know that the stretching, outside could definitely be, a mindfulness practice. There's obviously, more serious meditation, different types of yoga, stuff like that.
I mean, for me, like where the house is at, there's a really nice, like kind of peaceful type setting where it's like a big
fucking
field.
Narnia out there.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So, for me, it's small things that separate my stuff throughout the day. Like, I take my 10 minutes to either drink my cup of coffee and eat my breakfast before I start that 9:30 work. And when I take lunch, it's not like eating lunch on the computer. Like I take,
we're very rigid about that.
like 8 to 10 minutes to just go, everything stays inside besides my lunch. I'll go sit outside, like listening to the birds and just taking a minute. And so when I come back in, I don't feel like, oh my gosh, I've been going all day. I'm like, I had my break. Even if it was 10 minutes, it was a small thing, but mentally what that did for me is it really reset myself. And especially if I'm going into a new category, if I'm doing something else, like it's a huge reset for me, and it's really, really worked well. I've tried to find things that work well because I have squirrel syndrome, and I will literally just bounce back between this, between that, and my mind will just keep going. And I've really tried to figure out ways in the past to like, how can I be more like the most productive that I can be? So those small things really, really make a difference for me. Taking that 10 minutes where I just feel like, I took 10 minutes for myself. It makes me way more productive for the back half of the day, for the morning, whatever it is.
Did you know that squirrels only find like 25% of the acorns that they hide?
Oh my gosh.
They literally do that they do what you're talking about. They go find acorns and they hide them in a bunch of different places.
Oh my gosh.
And they find this, like, I don't know the actual number, but it's like 20%, somewhere
That's
in that
amazing.
range. They don't find any of them. And they spend their whole life hiding acorns for themselves that they can't find. They have no clue. Actually, I'm very square because I always have really good ideas of where to put stuff. I'm like,
But that's great. It's
Totally
like, but that's great. Like,
remember.
it's kind of like
passport in a
finding
book
20
once.
bucks in your pocket, like that you forgot about. It's like a squirrel that goes and it's just like, oh shit, Throwback Thursday, which reminds me, we got the throwback
Here we go.
collection from Sharpen the Axe coming at you hot in a couple week or
Weeks.
two.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
With that tie-dye that Drew's wearing, don't forget to use the code unprepared at sharpentheaxecode.com, or use the code Kiala for your discount to actually get applied to the Kiala Foundation out in Kauai.
We should note that it's a soft tie-dye as well. Like,
It is a
that's
very
pretty
nice.
rare.
Yeah,
It's a
that's true.
Damn
It's a good
good
material.
tie-dye.
Yeah.
They're custom tie-dye, so we actually get to use our shirts as opposed to, we joked earlier that some of the tie-dye shirts you can shave with them. They're so
Precisely, yeah.
coarse you can.
Dude, I think I ran once,
Oh, your
and I don't
nips.
even know where it was. Like, I don't know whose tie-dye it was, but
Fucking walking through the old port with
I was
diamond cutters
like running
attached
by,
to us.
like running into the nearest CVS for Band-Aids for my nipples. I'm like, this is brutal.
What do you got on there?
Sharpen the Axe
Moleskin.
tie-dye, safe for your nipples,
For sure.
and it looks great.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know where we were.
We were talking about squirrels mostly.
We were,
And then Castle
you were
kicks
talking about
in the
just
door,
like little things at work. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like what?
mindfulness
Like
aspect.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's that mindfulness stuff that really
so
works?
for me, I this is the thing that I struggle with the most. Absolutely. So Hunter talked about COVID. You go from this room to that room to that room to this room. And then at the end of the day, you look at your watch and 9,000 of your steps that you normally have throughout your day are just gone. So I've got my little handy dandy sheet here, and I have my 6 blocks with the little walking guy. And I check off 1 box every time I walk for 10 minutes. So I walk every morning when I get up. And then, like you just said, as I switch tasks, I go for a walk. And like, there's basically, if you read a biography on anyone who's done something amazing, they're obsessed with walking, because they'll walk and talk with people and think about ideas, and your body's going to work a lot better with, the juices flowing, for lack of a better term. Like, you go for a walk and you just like for me, if I go for a walk or a run, I've got 3 or 4 ideas. And I actually, like, when I go for a walk, I have to bring my phone with me, because I just have this note that has a trillion ideas in it. And like, that's
like 60% of your work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the other day when you said that to me, it really like hit home, because I'm like, if people could understand what he's like saying, he's saying that just because he's on this walk, like part of your job is to be creative, and you understand that being at the table is not the best spot for that. Like, you could sit down, you could probably just be like, okay, I'm gonna try to think of ideas, but it's not going to work for you. Like, that walk is part of your job. You're doing a lot of your work there. So when you get to the table, you're productive.
And like that's hard. And again, things that, society does to us, that's really challenging, because, I struggled in like middle school and high school, couldn't sit still, couldn't listen. And it's like what I thought was me being a space cadet for 25 years of my life is now every article that I write, every t-shirt that I design, all the programs and stuff. Like, most of the programming I write in my head while I'm walking, and then I just got to make sure I quickly get back and, sort of put it down on paper. So that's one of those things where if you're one of those people that sort of daydreams a little bit too much, there's a pretty good chance you could use that to your advantage if you start taking
100%.
notes and sort of go there. Cause like, it's again, we always joke specialization is for insects. Like I'm the kind of person who is, I'm not like great at anything. I'm just pretty good at a lot of separate things. And a lot of that comes from, I think about it for what I thought at first was way too long.
I'm like trying to find it here, but and then like just the walking, like it's almost like every 5 or 10 minutes, like longer that you're walking, like something else beneficial happens. It's like all of a sudden blood pressure starts to drop, blood sugar starts to drop, creativity increases, like that all, like it's not just the creative side, but
and like anytime I'm in
health benefits
a
as well.
shitty mood, I'm a 20 or 30 minute walk outside away from like wiping that clean. Like it's either that or the assault bike. Like there's certain things, certain physical things where we go back to, our evolution and, being a little bit more primal, that reset stuff for us, and just give us a little bit of context. Like, I cared about that.
Yeah. And I think that the primal thing is really like, for me, that's work too. Because I grew up in like, sitting down was the hardest thing for me to do. Like, sitting through a class, like in college, I was literally known for the kid that I would bring a sweatshirt, put it on the ground, sit in the back of the class, and I would kneel. I'd slide my chair back, because just the fact of me sitting, like even now, like we just got standing desk, I am so much more productive standing than I am sitting. And I knew that, because when I sit, it just never worked for me. So it's just
body kind of shuts down. It thinks you're trying to rest.
Yeah.
It doesn't think you're trying to be active with your mind.
Didn't do it. But the whole primal aspect, like that's my go-to. Like even when I lived in New York City, like I'm like, okay, I need a break. I go home because I know home is a reset, because home is very just minimal. Like it's the woods. But when I left there, I felt like, okay, like I'm ready to go back to the city. We're a little more stressful, but it's going to be good. I'm going to be productive. It grounded me big time.
Yeah. You can learn a lot of lessons within a controlled environment that then translate really well. So like for me, the mindfulness thing, like I do meditate. I am currently taking the Waking Up course by Sam Harris. He has an app, and it's crazy how he explains it, because basically he, tries to get you to realize that consciousness, the things that appear within consciousness are literally just like you observing something. It's not something necessarily happening to you. So like when I used to, because I've been meditating for a long time, when I used to meditate, if my wife opened the door to come down into the basement, if my dogs were barking, if whatever, I would literally take my headphones off and be like, can't do it. And he has you go through and he's like, listen as closely as you can and find the sound and realize that it just appears and then it disappears. It's gone. And now I can meditate with my eyes open. I can meditate if there's all these different things happening around me, because they're literally just inputs that come in. And I need that in my life to then tell me when certain things are happening that would either, get me too excited or too pissed off or whatever it is. It's literally just my consciousness observing something and I'm turning it into something else. And like you guys are doing something similar here by like, I'm not going to, because multitasking is actually impossible. You can't do two things at once, essentially. So like you guys are realizing that like, when you're working and eating, you literally go from 3 seconds of eating to 3 seconds of working to 10 seconds of eating to whatever. And like, if you had to like
6 hours later, I'm done my food. And
if you like had to be blind and deaf, like for 5 seconds out of every 20 seconds you were working, things probably wouldn't go that well. And that's sort of how that is. So you guys use that as that tool to realize that when I'm doing something, I should be doing it.
And I mean, so much of it is environmental as well. I mean, you have to create those boundaries and separations. And, through COVID, I think that what that's done is, there's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of being in the same place. But if you can turn that into, setting up a more regimented time schedule, or even setting different zones in the house, like, I definitely miss going into the office and having the office separated from the house. But it was easily realized, when I came to Maine, I had an intent of staying here for like a couple weeks or so. I thought COVID was going to be a very short-term thing. Obviously, very wrong about that.
Here we are.
But what had happened was I found that you create your own environment. You build your own schedule, and it's more about the discipline to stick to it and how that affects you, and then just realizing like this is successful and this isn't. Being able to build, I was very lucky, I'm fortunate in the respect to, I came to Maine and I found something that worked, and that was the separation from kind of the craziness that I had lived for 10 years. And, I had chose to kind of build on that and, ended up buying a house out here that kind of serves various purposes. Right now it's literally headquarters and the gym and home, and it's got plenty of space, but it's a complete retreat from where I was.
Right.
But it literally allows, that environment is what's allowed success through this time and allowed those key changes, is the fact that it's got a gym which is separate from the house, and the house is broken up in a way to where there's multiple living quarters, but there's also a separate space for the office. So you have a very, they're not far apart from each other by any means, but you do have those spaces, times, and environments.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. We tell people like the bedroom is used for like sleep and sex, basically. Like you go in.
I thought you were just gonna say sleep. I was like, speak for yourself.
Good one, Code.
I was wondering, you haven't fucked with him at all.
I know.
Yeah, no.
We gotta have to have some of that in there.
Yeah, there has to be.
You were so cute together.
The just the idea that like if you're somebody who goes into their bedroom and it also acts as like the Netflix on my laptop, I'm gonna hang out here in the middle of the day sort of thing. Your body just gets confused. So it's when you go into bed at 9 o'clock at night, it's like, is this Netflix mode? Is this sleep mode? Like, what is this? And
this is the first place I've had that I don't have a TV in the bedroom. Like that used to be a thing. I used to like fall asleep to the TV. Now there's no TV in the bedroom. The bedroom is bedroom. It's, it's got its specific purpose and its environment. I think realizing the need for that, and realizing those separations is key.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in that for work, like the work as well. That was super difficult for me at the start of COVID. It's like, I guess now this like one chair in my dining room table, this is like the work chair, but it's also like 6 feet away from the couch. And I tried that for a little while, like the work on the couch thing. And I was like, this is not a thing. Like this, this isn't working.
Nap time.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you find anything? So you're kind of interesting, or your situation's kind of interesting because it was somewhat forced in the sense that there were so many things that, like, you weren't a block away from your office. I guess you're probably closer to your office theoretically now, but like, it was, a lot of people struggle with changing a habit because it's like a small thing that they need to change. Whereas you kind of were put into an environment where you were forced to rebuild your routine, because, you know, it's not like, oh, I just can't go to the office now. Where am I going to work? But I'm in the same place. Like, you were 100% picked up and moved somewhere else. Was there any like difficult habits to form, or was it like, because Cody is pretty good about that, like it was all pretty good habits that were easy to kind of keep up with? Does that make sense? I feel like
completely.
I bumblefucked my way through that question, but
No,
here we
not
are.
at all. I get what you're getting at. I mean, I was just I was very blessed to have the opportunity to come to Maine, because what it did is it forced a lot of change.
A little trial by fire.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was definitely difficult at first. I mean, you're probably talking like sugar withdrawals, caffeine withdrawals. Like, I was a shitty person to deal with for the first few weeks. Just, you know, not having those normal things. But what I found is it was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me, just because making those changes and staying in the same environment would have been 10 times harder.
Right.
This was a change where it was like, there is no
Everything's
McDonald's,
new, so I
there's
get to choose like my.
It was just
habits.
like big reset button, and then just having a positive influence to follow. I think that was a huge thing. Is there's this mixture of you know, many people are curious as it's becoming, you know, more known now, but you know, Cody's the health wellness, like, completely focused there, and I'm like, kill yourself to run a business, you know, just very atypical, you know, kind of crazy business guy. And finding the middle ground between those two was not easy, but that environment allowed for it, because it was just very simply like, all right, well, we're going to the gym and we're going to eat this, and, you know, we're not going to do these things. And, you know, we just found a routine and schedule that worked.
Was it like tough to kind of, to me, it sounds like there's a level of like that almost plausible deniability, like, oh, this is out of my hands. Luckily, it's in somebody's hands who's like, you know, well, obviously very well intentioned and knows what he's doing. Is it like, there's got to be a level of comfort?
I think to that. Yeah, I think there's a level of comfort, but I also think that it's not out of his hands. And I'm a firm believer of, like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, yes, I'll tell Scott, like, yo, we got to go work out. But if he's being like, I don't want to work out, then there is a pushback there, but there's also like, I want him to want to work out.
Right.
Like, you know, and for someone to see the benefits, I think that it makes in their life, they need to be able to want that. So that was my main goal with him, like, for him to see the benefits of what health and wellness has done to my life, but for him to actually understand it like I do, he needs to see that. And he did the same thing with me with work. Like, work is a great thing. Like, where I'm at now, I feel so good about my life. And that's a lot of it is because of how Scott has helped me, you know, how, you know, grow in that aspect. But it's something that he's showing me and kind of guiding me through. It's not something where he's just like, bam, here's all this stuff.
It's not like you're
not thrown to the
like
wolves.
The personal trainer analogy. Like, there was, you know, I had worked, I'd made previous attempts to work with a trainer at a CrossFit gym, and it was always that thing, like, it was a different relationship because you're not doing it with them. They're just kind of, you feel awkward because they're watching you and just like telling you to do things. But doing it with somebody, it's that community aspect that I think really changed the dynamic. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that with somebody. But it's that partnership that creates success, in my opinion. It's the fact that there's a mutual engagement and a mutual benefit to be able to accomplish something together.
I mean, we talk about that as coaches all the time. I think everybody, or like anybody in this building who coaches, is very much of the mindset that we can't force health upon you. Like, there has to be a level of like, yeah, I'll I'll be the motivational guy or like the reminder, like, hey, let's not forget why you're doing this. But if an athlete or kind of a regular affiliate member comes to me and is just like, I need accountability, like I need somebody to tell me what to do, I'm like, I'm sorry, like you're in the wrong place. Like I will give you, I will try to give you that information and allow you to make the best decisions possible. And if you're an athlete, it's I'm not motivating you. Like if you don't have that kind of internal drive to get what you want, like it's not coming from me. And we also tell people like you wouldn't want it that way. Like you don't want to be, because as soon as I'm gone or as soon as you move away or as soon as life takes over, like if you were relying on that one person for your health and wellness, like they did it wrong. And it's hard.
It took me a while to adapt to that because, initially I thought that, that's the way that it should work, is almost like a personal training type scenario, right? As I was like, well, I'm going to be told what to do and I'm going to have all this success. And I did that for, off and on for a little bit prior to working in Maine. And it's successful to an extent, but it's not like you miss that community aspect. And then you miss that like accountability aspect to yourself because you're just scheduling an appointment, showing up and kind of half-assing your way through it, versus when you're working with someone and there's mutual goals and benefits, you're almost, iron sharpens iron type thing. You're pushing each other towards, just accountability. Like you may feel like shit that morning and not want to do it, but you're not just getting up to show up for someone that, is leading you through. You're like, no,
it's like texting,
getting in and
like
doing it,
hanging out while you're suffering over in the corner.
Exactly.
I think
it's not the same.
What that allows too is it allows you to build confidence in yourself. And I think confidence is like
100%.
One of the biggest things that can really change someone's life in all aspects. I really do.
I mean, you mentioned it with the post. I mean, I didn't even like showing up to CrossFit events in normal clothes, let alone having a shirtless picture of me anywhere on social media. That would have never happened. And it's just that confidence can't be just having that okayness with yourself. It can't be explained until you've kind of not had it before.
Yeah.
Like when you don't have any level of confidence in like your personal appearance or your health, or like, it's
like the
slippery slope.
It's like the sleep thing. If your standard is 6 hours and you're like, yeah, I'm fine to operate, but you don't know what it's like to get the 8.5, 9 hours. You don't know what it's like to have the confidence to do those things on your own. Like you kind of can't miss what you never had. But
there's a couple of things that I want to pause here for, just to address some of the mental health issues that are being associated currently with COVID and things that people are going through. The two things that have stuck out to me in this conversation are, number one, that idea of self-worth. There are a lot of people out there that aren't aware of the fact that subconsciously they don't necessarily believe in themselves. So they don't take care of themselves because somewhere they feel like they don't deserve to take care of themselves.
Absolutely.
And you see it so often, and it's devastating because, it can present itself in, overconfidence. You know what I mean? You sort of overcompensate for it and you try to tell a story publicly of maybe how great you are. And behind the scenes, you've got someone that just won't take care of themselves because they believe that they're not worth it. And every single person on earth deserves, has the right to be healthy and happy. And there's, certain ways to get there. And then the other side of this is, let's think about like what would have happened had you stayed in Long Beach and not been able to go to the office and been like you, a lot of you was probably holding on to and hanging on to the going to the office, just the walk and just the interaction and, maybe a little bit of sunshine as you're making the walk. It's usually pretty sunny there, that kind of thing. And, what could have happened and what is happening to people all over our country right now that are stuck in this one place and all of these negative feedback loops. And the only reason I bring it up is just to say, we're sitting here right now talking to someone who was able to turn that situation around and have the exact opposite happen. So yes, extra time when you're in a negative feedback loop is actually bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. You just get driven further and further down into the hole, and the way you feel makes you behave the way that you are, or the way that you're behaving. And then the way that you behave makes you feel the way that you are. And you really just kind of drive yourself down. But Scott is proof that you have a little bit more time right now and you have the ability to make that leap for yourself. So
Absolutely.
everyone is worth it to themselves, no matter, you know, what you've done or what you're going through, like kind of a move forward thing, let the past be the past. And there's a quote that I won't be able to remember, I'll butcher it, but it's something about, you know, leaping off a cliff and learning how to fly on the way down. And a lot of times that's what it takes to make a serious change in your life. And like, if people are worried about making a change, but they're not happy with where they are, like I say, fuck it, like make that change.
What's the worst that could happen?
if you're miserable, but you're scared of change, like it's just, I just think it's really important to make that leap and learn how to fly on the way down. And like, I saw myself going down that path, and that's where the walking came from. And that's where making sure that, you know, I'm meditating and doing all of these things, because you just get just sitting there in front of a computer, you just feel stuck and you feel stale. You get those like 3 or 4 periods throughout the day where you just feel like crap and you can't really put a finger on it. And it's like, no, man, we're still animals, got to move, got to eat real food, get a little bit of sunshine. Like, it's not super complicated, but when your life has none of that in it, you got to make that jump. You have to.
And I think it's that adversity to change that, you know, I struggled with so much. And it was kind of, you know, the jump to Maine literally happened at Whole Foods. Funny enough, we walked into a Whole Foods on a Sunday night, go get like eggs and
In LA.
whatever, in LA, and shelves were empty. People were not behaving like people. Like, it started to, you could very quickly see the writing on the wall of like, okay, this is going to be a difficult time, and this is very serious. And literally, you know, following day, walked into the office, remote worked everybody, shut everything down. And, you know, having the opportunity to come here, it's that was insanely difficult. I mean, I was the guy that was like, I was very just stuck where I was. Like, making that change literally required like a global kind of push, you know, and gaining that seriousness. Cause he can tell you the days prior, you know, prior to seeing that, I was very like, COVID's going to blow over. It's not going to have much of an effect. Like, I was very much in denial on what was going on. But, you know, being fortunate to just take that first step and that jump, you know, I've had a very, just positive series of events that, you know, couldn't have happened without a culmination of factors. There's a lot of great influences that allowed for that to happen. But I mean, to those staying at home, it's a personal decision. I mean, that's hard to hear, but it's like, you have to make that choice, and you have to say, I'm going to do something for me. And that's hard to do when your self-worth isn't there. I mean, I used to be at a point where like, I'd go 2 months without getting a haircut because I just didn't care.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't feel that I was worth it. I felt my entire existence was to wake up, go into the office, work. I was very in an isolated environment, and I didn't really see anybody or interact with too many people other than virtually. So why bother?
Yeah.
When it's hard to hear, but you have to decide like you want some level of change, and then it's step by step. And I mean, it's evolutionary. It takes time and it takes help.
Yeah, the help portion is so important here, right? So you do want, let's say you do want to make the change, you don't know how, like again, the tribes thing, these mutually beneficial relationships where it's not just you're both trying to get something from each other, but there's also, you know, people really in person give a shit about each other. I'm talking everyone. Like, we got the whole like every man for himself thing going in the United States right now, and that's just a reflection of poor mental health. You feel these things, and they feel so personal to you that it feels like they couldn't be going on in someone else's mind. And if we've got, I mean, there's also a epidemic of mental health issues in the United States. So other people are feeling it. But if you stay alone in that, like that's where your headspace goes.
I mean, it's a gnarly snowball. I mean, I'm more comfortable talking about it now than I have been in years past. When I was struggling with depression for a decade, those snowballs can be dangerous if not monitored. And that's something that, you know, it really bothered me through COVID, with some friends and stuff, is I just saw friends wall off and isolate to an extent that I had never seen before.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was their jobs were furloughed, or, in my case, a lot of them were business owners that had done absolutely nothing wrong, but they're having to let people go and shut down their offices and shut down their businesses. And the emotional load on an owner who had spent 20 years building that business, that's very difficult to overcome. And then you're faced with the unknown of, okay, what's next? I can't do anything. I'm stuck. I had to let all these people go. And that's where I feel, COVID has hopefully really brought to light the importance of mental health.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that a lot of people aren't comfortable talking about. They're very, well, what is somebody going to think? What is, in my position, it was always, well, nobody can know because it's they're going to question my capacity. They're going to question my decision making. They're going to question where, why was that decision made? And once you realize that it's just something that a lot of people work with, and particularly through COVID, it's, the rates are skyrocketing. It's something that needs to be talked about, because the simple asking your friend, like, how you're doing, making a phone call, popping up on FaceTime, people don't realize that when someone's deep down in that snowball, the littlest things can make the biggest difference. Make the call, like, talk to somebody. I mean, especially through COVID. And if you haven't heard from somebody, just ask. Like, it's a big deal.
It is. It really is. And it's hard for me because we're going through this, and it's like, I always try not to like politicize things. You know what I mean? So there's that piece of me that wants to start ranting about certain things, and I'll abstain from that and really kind of not go there. But, this, again, we're meant to be in groups. We're meant to interact with each other. We're meant to interact with each other in person, not yell at your aunt on Facebook about what sign she has on her lawn. Like we have the machinery to work through our issues in person. And again, I talk back about, what society does to you and what stories it tells you. Like when you think about someone who is dealing with these sort of issues, it's like, what if we flipped it around and said something like, this person has higher depth of feeling. Like you would want a leader to be empathetic, to have a sensitivity to them, to be able to go through these things. But society might have told you your whole life that because you're, more sensitive, have more feeling, that you should shut that off and not talk about it. And it's like, what if that is this massive skill? Like you see the kids that are like super energetic and they want them to like sit completely still. And it's like, no, what are you doing right now? You can't like just these ideas that if something is different about you, that it's not unique and amazing and cool and can be used to your advantage is like such an issue. And I think we're trending in the right direction. I think the mental health thing was probably more under the rug than it is now. So it might be, sort of looked at like we're going through something new, but there is the possibility that we're just finally talking about it.
I think it's that for sure. I think my immediate thought was like when kind of COVID kicked off, people who really struggled immediately, that had been building up for a long time.
Yeah,
like it doesn't, it just threw a magnifying glass.
Can't distract yourself every second.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like if you, and if you're somebody who's, who experienced that, it's like, you got to look back. That didn't happen overnight. Like COVID didn't blow into the United States overnight, and you didn't, start experiencing those seriously negative thoughts, emotions, feelings, whatever, the negative health effects, like, oh, COVID hit and I'm unhealthy. Like that was,
we finally found the limit to how long you can scroll through Instagram. Yes. And it turns out it's not 24 hours a day.
For real.
You can't open it the 74th time in the hour and be distracted. You're like, you know what? These are the same things. Even though they're from different people, these are all the exact same things. To get back a little bit to some specifics of what you guys are doing, I'm assuming the food thing, I know Cody, it's real food.
Oh yeah.
Is that
100%.
Is that just a huge sort of driver of where you guys are at?
If it has a shelf life, I don't really buy it. It's real food. It's so funny. I read a book that was some people they were like, it's so funny. My mom was over the other day because my sister's pregnant. She's having a baby boy, which is amazing, and I'm so excited for her. But I have this book, and it's called Real Food for Pregnancy. And I read it just because I was
Congratulations,
so, yeah, right?
Code.
I wish.
You look
I
good.
read it. Thanks. I'm glowing. I read it just because it was fascinating of how, like, with prenatals and whatnot, like the foods that can actually do that, because I think it was very ancestral in a way of like, these foods can do the pretty amazing things for your body. So, I mean, for me, I'm a huge believer on like, go back to your roots, go back to basic, like eat your vegetables, eat like the good meats, quality over, I don't even want to get down the whole macro, whatever road, because you know how I feel about that stuff.
Well, it's so we're never saying don't go down that road, but we're saying that can't be your baseline, because you can, anything can be your macros, right?
Exactly.
And like, it's an argument that's pointless, that doesn't need to necessarily happen. Let's start with real food. And then if it works for you, if you're a more detail oriented person and you want the macros, that's great. Go
there
ahead.
There are people that need macros, you know, that compete at a high level. I think there's people in this world that need macros, but I think that everyone needs to get them from a quality source. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of where we're at now. And
it's just transitioning to, I mean, from a guy that ate pretty much everything processed, prepped, and from a restaurant for a decade, you know, that transition to just real food, where, you know, I thought it was the craziest thing we could get our meat from a farm down the road. And we went and got the eggs from, you know, a couple blocks away. And the immediate health changes that you start noticing, I mean, obviously portions and stuff are a thing, but just the simple transition to cleaner, better food is huge.
I mean, more often than not, the quality of food will end up just dictating the rest.
Yep.
Like if you eat high quality food, like you're probably not eating as often, because the quality of food is higher. There's more micronutrients in it, the stuff you weren't getting before. You're full for longer, assuming you're not just eating like rice and potatoes straight, you know, for the entire time. If you've got the kind of, I don't want to say like the plate, like the like the USDA plate, but like, you know, if it's high quality food, you're probably not all that concerned with the quantity of it.
Yep. And it's just understanding. I think where I came from, the biggest thing was not understanding the difference between what real food does for you versus what McDonald's does for you. And that seems very basic to, you know, a lot of people that, you know, whether within the CrossFit industry or within the fitness industry, they've been educated on it. They understand. But, you know, coming from a family background where that wasn't known, you know, family didn't have the resources or understand the value of, you know, food sourcing, you end up, you know, not getting it. Now you see the difference. That simple changes, it kicks off habits and a lifestyle that, you know, completely changes mood, energy, efficiency, performance, like at all levels. It starts at that base.
And you're eating and you're taking your supplements simultaneously. You know what I mean? Like your multivitamin is built into, you know, your wild caught fish and your vegetables and all these different things. And like you should be at a point eventually where you can go get blood work done and just know that your body doesn't do a great job of absorbing whatever B12, and you supplement with that, as opposed to, you know, your catch-all of bringing all these things in. Because one, the food that you ate that caused the deficit, like you might just be bringing yourself back up closer to baseline. And then the bioavailability, your body actually absorbing the stuff that you're taking in supplement form, like doesn't work all that well. You have to take ridiculously high doses for your body to take any of it in.
I mean, just as a very factual example, Inside Tracker did blood panels, and, you know, previous blood panel work, I was off on probably 90% of my markers. Now there's 3 that aren't in the green zone. Like, you know, to have 23 out of 26 within optimal ranges. I mean, we're not doing anything crazy specific. It's really just eating good, high quality food, and just maintaining. I mean, those changes for me were like key, because you could see, you know, not only did I feel better, not only could have better decision making and like you see the life change, but to actually see it on paper and to go from, you know, 9 months ago to now was, you know, it's a bit of a very humbling thing to look at.
You guys are describing the Misfit project without me necessarily having to ask you. Like I'm nudging the conversation, but like this, I had such a hard time with getting this information out when I just wanted to be a walking encyclopedia. And it's like, well, everyone's walking around with a Google machine, so they can do that themselves. It's not very challenging. And I don't think I can keep up with, Watson from IBM or anything like that. So just this idea that having all this complex knowledge was going to help people versus having an example right in front of you. Cody's just the kind of person who gets his sleep, likes to be outside. You're lucky to grow up in the kind of environment that taught you that sort of thing. And, we joked the other day, we ran the 10K together, and Scott almost ran 6 miles during his 5-mile PR time. It was off by like 1 minute or something like that. And he turned to Cody and was like, I can't really figure out exactly what you're making me do in the gym, but if I'm going to knock that amount of time off, it's obviously working. And like this translates to everything Misfit does, absolutely everything. The Misfit project, affiliate programming, Misfit athletics, all these different things. The devil is not in the details as much as it is in the execution.
Just consistency. And
we want to get people to buy into this bigger idea of, I'm going to show up, I'm going to put the effort in, and I'm going to work hard, and I am going to own whether I do well or not. Those guys are not going to write anything on a piece of paper that I'm magically going to eat the piece of paper and then become a better athlete, a better, person, all these different things.
Just sets you up for failure.
So you just know, like, I'm sure you have variance in your training. You don't want to do the same thing all the time, but you just go in and you give a good effort. You set a good example, and you're like, okay, like, and Scott's a little bit more like me, like a little graph every once in a while would be nice.
Yeah.
It's this, and this, but like
it's taking some adaptation to be okay with that. Like just kind of follow along style. Cause I am very much like, all right, I want to test it here and I want to test it again here. And I want to see the difference, but that just comes, like we found at the 10K, it comes over time. And you kind of just have to be okay with like you're doing something.
10-minute
you're always
PR
improving.
is so much better than a graph.
Yeah.
We joke around in here a lot. It says winning is pretty fun. Like when you get that proof of concept just right there, done actively, like you lived that, and as opposed to like, well, according to this metric, I'm 0.76% better. Yep. Cody's like, please, let's go run.
Yeah. It's just, I think that it's that whole like, why do you do it? It's for life type thing. You know what I mean? And I think that life is going to bring you those challenges, and your mental capacity, physical capacity, like where you are in life will get shown here or there. I mean, like life is going to test you. And when you have the confidence to be able to handle those tests, I think that that's when it's the best feeling personally. And that's not just a physical thing, that's a mental thing. And for me, like the gym gave me that confidence. It was, and like you said, kind of being an athlete from a young age, you have to have that confidence in yourself, especially when if you're playing specific positions where people.
It's hard to know how to transfer it though.
It is. It's very hard to know. It is hard to know how to transfer it. And it's, that's something I'm still learning to outside of fitness. Like I'm trying to learn to transfer that stuff. So it's just, it's been a very cool journey to see. But yeah, I think that, like you said, I mean, life is going to test you. So you're going to be able to see it here and there when you definitely make improvements.
So on the exercise side, quick examples of what you're doing. And obviously, if you're lifting weights and you're trying to get stronger, protein, carbs, electrolytes, creatine, leucine, and fenugreek extract is one hell of a mix. And you can get that all in one jug, proper recovery. If you head to properfuel.co and use the code word Misfit, you will save on your first order. So what's your training like, Cody?
Yeah, and just to say, like, to have that all in one jug that's a big thing. Like, and for it to taste good, like that's.
Cody used to make fun of me with my hockey bag of supplements because I would make that mixture, and
he was like,
powder's flying through the sky. They think I'm a drug lord.
Yeah. Seriously, they're like, just pick one and deal it. And he's like, oh no, I got all these. It's like now it's just in one.
What do these even do?
Yeah, I mean, the training is just based on. I obviously know, like we meet, so every month we kind of meet and we say, like, let's talk about some things we want to work on. because obviously what I want is different than what he wants. So I want him to be able to feel like he is making progress in specific areas that he wants. But I'm also not going to just, I'm not going to give him this idea of like, oh, like if you see a video of like, I eat this pizza and I, do my curls and all this, it's like, no. Like, I understand that sometimes you just got to grind, and we're going to grind. So, I mean, the typical training day is in the morning, at night, we do different pieces. There's a little bit of bodybuilding mix in there. There's some days that are just straight cardio. There's also obviously functional fitness, CrossFit style workouts, all that kind of stuff in there. It's a very well-rounded type programming that I like, and I think it allows us to do it consistently. I think that's the biggest thing, is us being able to.
That's a huge part. It's just having something that you enjoy going in to do. Like the worst part about starting a new habit is like doing the shit that you don't want to do. Like make it as easy as possible for yourself to like adopt a good habit. And especially if you're just getting into it like that. Yeah. Like, okay, if you like doing curls, like on the treadmill, like fuck, that was better than what you were doing a couple of days ago. So let's start there, and then we can for sure trend in the right direction.
Well, it's almost the concept of getting, I call it like addicted to fitness. Like I thought, I had a lot of friends through the community that, I thought it was crazy the amount they would work out, the amount of time that they would dedicate to the gym. And then now I fully understand why. And it's because it does have such a kind of profound effect on so many levels, but you do have to find a training style that you can maintain and continue with, especially at any sort of volume. And I mean, I think COVID presents an opportunity where there's a little bit more flexibility in time to allow for that, which, I feel very lucky to be able to take advantage of the environment and make that happen. But I mean, just in general, that consistency comes from constantly varied. Everything's different. Like we can maintain that level because it's always different.
For sure. So what we typically do to end the show is we do final thoughts. So we sort of try to tie everything back together, and I will give you guys a little bit of direction, kind of nudge you, and I'll go first. But we're going to bring it full circle and just talk about how, for one example of for us, how these things can affect our day-to-day, but not related to physical performance. So mental performance can literally be, how well are you doing in your job? Do you have a, mood, anything sort of like that. And for me, it literally is just about the tipping point for me was when my lens changed from what's my 5K run time and how much can I back squat and can I beat so-and-so in this lift or this workout, and do I go to local competitions and stuff? And I'd wrapped way too much of my identity up in that. And just the idea of talking about the exact same topics, because we didn't talk about anything new today, it's just maybe a new context, is for me developing that context and realizing that all of these things I am trying to lead myself towards being a higher performer in my job and having a better mood. And it doesn't sound like anything crazy, but when you go through and you're doing these things, like I'm asking myself in a workout, like, am I really, did I show up for this? Am I being resilient today? Like, am I really kind of digging in? I don't care what my time is typically anymore. I don't really care. Like I used to be obsessive over like if it's RX or whatever. I don't have 50-pound dumbbells anymore. The head fell off one of them in the gym here, and then the other one ended up who knows where. And I have 40-pound dumbbells. So that means I literally scale every workout in the Misfit Anywhere program, and I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to me. It's like, did I hold on to the dumbbells longer than I normally would? When I go out for my second run, did I mail it in or did I try? And like, I feel good mood wise when I come out the other end, when I put the effort in, but then, when it's not there, I translate it back to how did I sleep? And like, did I really struggle to write that article today? And I'm just adjusting levels and thinking about things from that perspective again, instead of just all the time, like, I can't back squat 400 pounds anymore. I hate this, whatever it is. Like, I've completely shifted my mindset, and it gives me a level of consistency where I know that I want to be really good at my job, and I know that I want to be, a good husband, good friend, good community member, these things. And that keeps me consistent, because I had no goalpost anymore for physical endeavors. It's this start stop bullshit all the time. Whereas now I'm like, okay, I can get behind all of these ideas because I just want to be better at what I do. And that does not have to be a physical pursuit. So,
yeah, I mean, I'll try to make it short, but it's very much what you just said. But talking about this lens thing, like even when I was working out so much and I was competing at like the peak or whatever, my lens was always to be the best person I can be, no matter what that is. And that lens has not changed. Other lenses have just come underneath it next to training, next to performance. There's now there's work, and there's, like you said, friendships, and there's life, and there's me being a good person. Like all those are there, but what sits above it is for me to be the best at whatever one of those that's going to be, or all of them. And doing this allows me to do that. When you talk about mood, I'm a different person. When you talk about performance, I'm a different person. Like there is a minute when I wake up where I'm like, shit, I'm tired. Maybe I don't want to do this right now, but that minute is completely taken away because I know when I come out the backside of that, like,
he's also holding you accountable.
Exactly. He's holding me accountable.
That's a two-way street.
When I walk into the gym, he's obviously walking there too. And I know, like, if I'm not doing it, like that means I have to send a text to Scott, be like, it's not happening today. But then what does that do to his day? And it's just like, it's not a question anymore, So, for me, like you said, I want to be the best person I can be in so many other levels, but this allows me to be that. And I understand that. And like, I understand that, and I understood it from a young age, just because, like you said, I was put into an environment where that's just what it was. But it gives me the confidence. It gives me just everything I need to be in life to be that. And honestly, like, part of me loves to be able to not say no to things in life. I don't want to be like, hey, you want to go hike Mount Chikora, and me be like, I don't know if I can get to that. Fuck no,
Just
man.
bring your dog and blame all the rest stops.
Yeah, right.
He's looking pretty tired right now.
Seriously.
We're gonna have to stop.
But like hell no. Like I get confidence in my life and in myself, which makes me a better person, by putting myself in stressful situations that I can make it out the backside.
Yeah.
And I fucking love that. And that's what fitness has done for me. And that's what I try to show to other people. You can succeed in life because you put yourself into a stressful position, mentally, physically, every day, and you make it out the backside. Other than that, man, like your stuff in life, like you will suffer. I think for me, I've had times where I've suffered so much up here more than I am in the real life setting.
Yeah, for sure.
And getting out of this sometimes takes, that for me to be able to be like, you know what, I put myself here, I made it through it. Like the other stuff in life, the other decisions, the other this, the other that, it's not such a big deal anymore. They're a lot easier for me to actually come out with a good, not just like get through it, but like come out with be like, I feel good about that. I really do.
For sure.
And it's just a life application of fitness and understanding that, like, my goal was never to be a crazy athlete, and I'm not too worried about the PRs or athletic achievements. Essentially, it was seeing the effects that it had on mood and performance. My goal was always to optimize life, not athletics. So I kind of come from a different aspect or a different background than most did. Mine was a health necessity for a change that then led to, oh, well, it's not just getting, my blood markers and everything in order. It's, I feel good when I wake up. I can do 10 times more things during the day and not feel like shit when I go to bed. And I can maintain it, and relationships improve, decision making improves. There's just so many effects that exercise can have throughout, that, it sounds preachy or like on a bandwagon train, but for 10 years I didn't understand. For 5 years I was exposed to it and didn't take advantage of it. I mean, I owned I've owned ROMWOD for 6 years, going into its sixth year. 5 of those years I was at every CrossFit competition, at the CrossFit Games, sitting in meetings, being right next to athletes, and completely unhealthy and completely like not taking advantage of what was sitting right in front of me. And the changes that just adopting that lifestyle a little bit. You know, you don't have to go to the far edge, but just understanding that like you have to take care of yourself. First step is understanding you are worth it. And like those, it's such a snowball effect. And I think it's almost a visual representation that's needed to kind of understand for a lot of people. But, you know, everyone's going to find success in different ways. Mine happened to be finding just an accountability partner, not someone that, you know, not a slave driver, not a like, hey, you got to do this, but just someone that you feel like, hey, let's try to achieve something together. And in this respect, it was, you know, where Cody helps me kind of maintain health and wellness, I'm able to help and share my experience on the business side and able to give an opportunity that says, you know, you're so much more than an athlete. You know, the big changeover was, you know, a lot of athletes of my friends I'm constantly hearing about, you know, whether it's a new sponsorship deal, they're offered to take over like training in a gym. It's just like, but do you want something beyond that? Like, that's where Cody was able to kind of latch on and say, well, yeah, I mean, you have interpersonal skills and you have all these other skills, and like, where do you want to grow and adapt? And it's having that kind of bilateral goal setting to where my health and wellness is improving just by sharing some of the habits, and then being able to expose him within the business realm as well. You know, there's people always ask, well, what's Cody's job title for the moment? And there isn't one. He's ghosting, but don't take that as like, he's a very key part of quite a few of my businesses. I mean, he's doing everything from like video editing to vendor management to like honestly taking some of the biggest meetings. And it's exciting to see that growth and just to see kind of the evolution of how that was able to play.
One of my other favorite quotes, see how many I can drop in this episode, is
quote.
What you do
One
speaks
fish,
so
two
loud,
fish. Oh, sorry.
I cannot hear what you say. So
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I can't.
There's something.
There's no
just-
Dr. Seuss in the middle of it.
I thought that's where you're going with. Sorry.
Some dingus. We allowed to have a microphone.
What you do speaks so loud that I cannot hear what you say. And you guys set these incredible examples for each other in different places. And so many people are always trying so hard to convince other people and tell people what to do. And it's like, you know what? If you set a really awesome example and you don't ram it down their throat, this is a lot of monkey see, monkey do that will happen from that situation. Show up, be there, be what you're asking them to be in front of them, and then they can join you, and then it can feel a lot more natural. And it sounds like you guys just set really good examples for each other in the areas where you specialize a little bit more. And like, that's how those things happen. You know, you hear so much about the psychology of coaching and parenting and all these other things where you're trying to make these connections and make perfect decisions. And it's like, you know, what's better than that is just living what you're asking someone else to live. If you do that, there's a much better chance of getting to that place. And Hunter, before you go, I have one more note here.
I think you should just wrap it up.
I
can't beat these final thoughts.
Well, this next one is an advertisement, but it is serious.
Oh.
A lot of this stuff that we're talking about, maybe you know, on what would be considered the negative side, has been brought on in my life because of traumatic brain injury. I've been whacked in the head or hit by cars or landed on my face snowboarding enough times that you know, I've had to deal with a lot of issues that I didn't, you know, when I was younger, before these things happen. And one massive barrier to entry, if someone wants to sponsor one of our podcasts, is we have to actually use the product that's there. And one of the show sponsors is Pure Spectrum CBD, and CBD oil is both neuroprotective and regenerative. So you can take it and protect your brain, and you can take it and regenerate the shit that I have lost or has been thrown out of whack from being hit in the head too many times. So it's, you know, we have been we've been trying to slide these advertisements in, and we try to have fun with them to make sure you guys don't have to sit here and listen to ad reads. But I actually use this stuff every single day. I use it to sort of mark the end of my work day to help me sort of switch into another mode. And you can head to purespectrumcbd.com, use the code word Misfit to save on it. But I use it every single day. It's made a big effect for me. And now Hunter is going to tell us what we've talked about today that has made a change in his life that's not physical.
I think it's more it's just the idea of all these things kind of coming together, and then it can seem overwhelming. And one of the things that I use myself, and then will tell my best example of being able to help people is as a coach at the affiliate. And it's just that there are a lot of things that we talked about, a lot of different kind of branches of the Misfit project, all the, the tribes, the stress, the sleep, the fuel, all that stuff. And it can seem like a lot, but use kind of the law of averages to your advantage. And what I mean is, if you have something that isn't going quite right, or you want to make that change, remember that you don't need to do it all at once. And then that you can, it's acceptable to kind of fall off here and there as long as you get back on. And like for me, a lot of times that has to do with eating. Personally, like I've much more recently, I've always been able to cook, but much more recently gotten into like, cooking and like preparing food and learning different ways to do it, and almost gamifying it. Like, oh, how can I take a recipe and figure out how to make it my own or something like that. And kind of, as opposed to having to watch a video or read a recipe, like have that knowledge on my own, but I'm trying to cultivate that, have that like baseline understanding of something so that I can use it in other aspects of my life. So the overarching point there is that you don't need to necessarily flip all of these switches at once, because I think outside of your situation, Scott, where you kind of got dumped into a completely new environment where you had to recreate all these habits, the fact is that for most of us, that's not the situation. It has to be a more slow and iterative process, but it's acceptable that you make those changes and then it gets hard. But as long as you kind of go back to it and are making that effort, eventually that law of averages is going to drag you in the right direction, to the point where you actually have made changes and your baseline of kind of normal is all these things that we're talking about, is having good relationships, making sure you're eating and drinking enough and that sort of thing. So that's what I got. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's what you got.
No, I mean, it definitely did, for sure.
All right, ladies and gents, that was episode 662 of the Misfit Project. Thank you again to our show sponsors, Sharpen the Axe. Head to sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code word unprepared, or you can use the word Keala, Keala, and save 10% and send 10% of your order to the Keala Foundation. If you don't know what that is, head to their website and check it out. It's a pretty amazing cause. sharpentheaxeco.com. I don't know if I said that already. PureSpectrumCBD.com. Use the code word Misfit. Properfuel.co. Also code word Misfit to save on your first order. And as always, I'm at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let me know what you thought of the episode and what you'd like to hear next. Thanks, gentlemen.
Of course. Thanks for
See you
having
next
us.
time.